a glass-walled boardroom, a black CEO reached across the polished table to offer her hand. The chairwoman smirked, lifted her own palm dismissively and said, "We don't shake hands with people like you." Silence fell over the room, like frost. Then came a few uneasy, nervous laughs. Cameras from the live-streamed investor meeting caught it all. The smirk, the slight, the quiet humiliation. But what no one in that glass cathedral of power realized was this. The woman who had just been insulted controlled every single dollar in that room. And by sunrise, $2.4 billion of those dollars would vanish without a trace. The boardroom on the 47th floor of Langston Tower was a shrine to authority. All glass, steel, and silence. 12 executives sat around a gleaming table that mirrored their own ambition. At its head was Victoria Sloan, the chairwoman of a financial empire, straightening her papers with the poise of a judge ready to deliver a sentence. Across from her sat Ava Monroe, the CEO of Monroe Capital, composed and unshaken. She was a woman who had built her investment firm from the ground up, deal by brutal deal. Today marked the final negotiation in a $2.4 billion merger that could redefine the entire industry. But to Victoria, this wasn't just business, and it was a performance, and she intended to humiliate her guest before the curtain closed. When Ava stood and extended her hand, Victoria leaned back, her lips curling into a smile that never reached her eyes. "We don't shake hands with people like you," she said coldly, her voice slicing through the room's gleaming quiet like a blade. The air froze. Several men exchanged uneasy glances. One coughed into his hand. Another let out a nervous half-smile. The silence stretched, deliberate, uncomfortable, cruel. Cameras from the live feed caught every single moment. The outstretched hand, the raw insult, the awkward, complicit laughter. Ava's hand stayed firm for a single heartbeat before she lowered it with calm precision. She neither blinked nor flinched. Her stillness wasn't weakness. It was strategy. "Understood," she said softly, and sat down. Victoria's smile widened, savoring her imagined triumph. "Now that we're clear on protocol," she said smugly, "let's proceed." As the meeting resumed, Victoria's tone grew sharper with every slide, every chart, every projection. She interrupted Ava mid-sentence, corrected her analyst with open condescension, and mocked her firm's valuation as naive. The men around the table chuckled along, emboldened by cruelty disguised as sophistication. But Ava didn't argue. She simply took notes. She observed every single expression. She memorized every smirk. When Victoria leaned forward and said, "You'll learn, Miss Monroe, that this industry doesn't reward emotional ambition," Ava merely nodded. But inside her, something precise and cold began to move. A decision forming with the sharpness of a scalpel. At 3:17 p.m., during a brief recess, Ava stepped into the hallway and made one phone call. Her voice was steady, measured. "Execute Clause 8.3, effective immediately." No explanation, no emotion. When she returned, the meeting picked up right where it had left off. Victoria barely looked up from her papers. "Where were we?" she asked, pretending not to sense the shift in Ava's demeanor. Ava met her gaze. "At the point," she said quietly, "where arrogance becomes expensive." Victoria frowned. "Excuse me?" Before Ava could reply, phones around the table began vibrating. One, then another, then all at once. Screens lit up with red alerts. The CFO's face went pale as he scrolled through his inbox. "Chairwoman," he stammered, his voice cracking. "Our primary funding, it's gone." "What?" Victoria snapped, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Monroe Capital has withdrawn all investment, $2.4 billion, effective immediately." The room exploded into chaos. Executives spoke over one another, raw confusion clashing with disbelief. Victoria's confidence shattered like glass under pressure. She turned to Ava, her eyes wide with fury. "You can't." "I can," Ava interrupted softly. "Clause 8.3 was approved by your own legal team. It authorizes immediate withdrawal if any act of misconduct is documented during negotiations." Her eyes flicked to the corner of the room, to the camera still recording the live broadcast. And thanks to this meeting, she added, you've given me all the documentation I need. Victoria's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her face flushed crimson, then drained to a chalky white. Do you have any idea what you've done? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Yes, Ava said calmly. I've protected my capital from contamination. Executives scrambled. One was dialing PR, another frantically checking market feeds. The digital ticker on the wall began to tremble, numbers tumbling downward in real time. Within minutes, headlines ignited across financial networks. Monroe Capital withdraws $2.4 billion. Sloan Industries in crisis. Victoria gripped the edge of the table, desperate. We can fix this, we can renegotiate. Ava rose from her chair. There's nothing to fix, she said evenly. This isn't a negotiation. It's a consequence. Her voice was quiet, yet it carried more weight than the storm now raging outside the glass walls. Victoria turned to her board, pleading. You're just going to sit there? She snapped. She's destroying everything we built. One executive spoke softly, his eyes downcast. No, ma'am, he said. You did. Ava gathered her portfolio. For future reference, she said, her voice clear and steady. Respect is cheaper than recovery. She turned toward the door but paused beside Victoria. The chairwoman stood frozen, disbelief etched into every line of her face. Ava leaned close enough that only she could hear. You thought power meant control, she said. It doesn't. Power means choice, and I just made mine. As Ava walked out, the cameras captured her reflection in the glass. Serene, composed, unstoppable. A woman leaving behind a boardroom she no longer needed. Behind her, the empire began to crumble in real time. Markets plunged. Banks called in guarantees. By evening, Sloan Industries' valuation had fallen by 38%. Investors scattered like smoke through shattered glass. By midnight, Victoria Sloan's face filled every newsfeed. The woman who lost billions with a single sentence. Ava never gave an interview. She issued only one brief statement. Partnerships end when respect does. The next morning, the media had a name for it. The Handshake collapse. Business schools would analyze it for years. And in quiet offices and glass boardrooms across the world, women who had once been dismissed replayed that clip and whispered Ava Monroe's name like a warning. Because sometimes power doesn't roar. Sometimes it simply stops extending its hand. If you believe respect can't be bought, prove it. Like this video. Share it everywhere. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and which moment hit you the hardest. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss stories that expose arrogance and celebrate unstoppable dignity. Thanks for watching.